The Mantid Cycle. In the later stages of the war with the Trolls, one enclave of Akir gathered at the southern edge of Kalimdor. Below the roots of the great Kipari trees, they established a new empire. These insectoids, known thereafter as the Mantid, saw no purpose in continuing a battle they knew they were not strong enough to win. Such restraint was unusual among the insectoids, but then there was the Mantid's reasoning. They still fervently worshipped the old gods, believing that their ancient master would one day rise from the prisons and re-establish their dominion over Azeroth. The best way to serve the entities was to expand the Mantid's strength, but to conserve it, refine it, and sharpen it. The Mantid would grow stronger without jeopardizing their survival. Though a revered empress ruled over the day-to-day activities of the Mantid, another group controlled the insectoid's destiny. The members of this group called themselves the Klaxi, meaning priest in their native tongue. They guided the actions of the empress and the Mantid swarms in the hopes of preserving and strengthening their race. Rather than seek retribution on the Trolls, the Klaxi turned their gaze on another enemy. Nearby dwelled the Mogu, mighty Titan forged who had guarded the Veil of Eternal Blossoms for untold ages. The Mantid found themselves drawn to the mystical valley. They were not aware of it at the time, but they were attracted to the lingering presence of the slain old god Isharj, whose festering heart had been locked away beneath the veil by High Keeper Ra. To seek out the dark essence beneath the veil, the Mantid launched a surprise attack against the Mogu. The Titan Forge narrowly withstood the swarm and drove them back to the Kipari forests. The Klaxi did not consider their defeat a failure. The surviving Mantid warriors had matured, grown more powerful and cunning. The Klaxi patiently waited 100 years before assaulting the Mogu again. They dispatched a new generation of young Mantid to besiege the Titan Forged. Once again, the survivors returned stronger. Thus began the Mantid cycle. Every century, a new Mantid clutch made war upon the Mogu. The ferocious battles removed the weak from the swarm, and only the strongest returned to the Kipari trees. Within only a few cycles, Mantid civilization had become tightly honed and rigid, utterly focused on eradicating weakness and empowering the mightiest of their kind. The Mogu marked the change with concern. They launched a campaign into the Mantivest itself to ensure that the cycle would not come again. The attack came at an insuspicious time for the Mantid. It was decades before the next clutch of warriors would hatch. The Mantid were few, and the Mogu were many. Initially, the Titan Forge devastated the insectoids' ranks, even the strongest survivors of the past swarms. Only one Mantid, Corvin, emerged to turn the tide of battle. Armed with blades forged of Kipari amber, the warrior eviscerated the Mogu ranks, thwarting their attack and sending them into retreat. So great was Corvin's skill that many Mantid came to believe that he was capable of cheating death itself. The High Elders of the Klaxi proclaimed Corvin a paragon and promised his deeds would become legend among their kind. But the honored warrior was still not satisfied. He knew it was only chance that he rose in his race's greatest hour of need. He did not want to leave the Mantid's defense to chance alone. The Klaxi agreed to task him with finding a solution. After years of experimenting with Kipari Zap, Corvin discovered that a living creature could be preserved within an amber cocoon, potentially for thousands of years. If the Klaxi placed their greatest warrior in these cocoons, they could be awakened whenever they were needed to avert disaster. Corvin became the first to undergo this preservation. In honor of his deeds, the Klaxi named him Corvin the Prime, the first of many paragons to come. As he lay undisturbed in his amber tomb, the great cycle he had almost single-handedly saved continued on, remaining unbroken for countless generations. The age of 100 kings, 15,000 years before the Dark Portal. Though High Keeper Ra had not been seen in millennia, his loyal Mogu maintained a vigil over the Veil of Eternal Blossoms, bravely fighting off each successive mantid swarm. Their faith that the High Keeper would one day return endured through century after century of hardships. Yet, that faith vanished once the curse of flesh manifested within the Mogu ranks. For the first time, the Mogu faced mortality. Fear and uncertainty took roots in their hearts. Small disagreements spiraled into conflict, violence, and bloodshed. Packs of Mogu banded together. Clans and warlords emerged by the score and engaged in brutal power struggles. Those who triumphed were quickly toppled by rivals. Through it all, their culture and language, even their sense of purpose and identity, began to change. This period of turmoil and conflict became known as the Age of 100 Kings, and the Mogu edged perilously close to destroying themselves from within. Only their basest instincts prevailed annihilation. At the beginning of each mantid swarm, the Mogu's petty conflicts would die down. The various clans would reluctantly band together to stand against the mantid. But once the swarm had retreated, internal hostilities would surface once again. As the Mogu battled the mantid, a number of other races arose in the region. Many of these creatures were drawn to the latent powers emanating from the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. Among these wondrous races were the Jinju, fish-like mystics who dwelled in the rivers and lakes. A bold and mischievous race of monkeys, known as the Hosen, also came to inhabit the dense jungles that encircled much of the Vale. But by far, the most intelligent of these newcomers were the wise Pandaren. The emergence of such life around the Vale piqued the interest of the four wild gods. Their names were Zuen, the White Tiger, Yulon, the Jade Serpent, Chi-Ji, the Red Crane, and Nuanzao, the Black Ox. Xuen and his fellow wild gods gathered at the Vale to watch over and guide the myriad life forms that dwelled in the area. Though the warlike activities of the Mogu often troubled them, the wild gods delighted in watching the other races flourish. In particular, Xuen and the other demigods developed close ties with the Pandaren, in large part due to their penchant for peace. The Pandaren considered the wild gods, whom they called the August Celestials, to be benevolent deities. They formed a system of worship devoted to the extraordinary beings. In return, the wild gods bestowed knowledge on the Pandaren, nurturing their ties to philosophy and the natural world. At the behest of the August Celestials, the Pandaren formed a culture that sought peace and harmony with the surrounding environment. Yet, soon a new Mogu leader would rise to challenge these philosophies. His name was Lei Shen, and his rule would threaten not only the mortal races of the Vale, but the August Celestials as well. The Thunder King, 15,000 to 12,200 years before the Dark Portal. As the Pandaren and other races prospered around the Veil of Eternal Blossoms, the Mogu continued their endless squabbling. It was during this cycle of violence that a warrior named Li Shen came to power. A descendant of a minor warlord, young Lei Shen was thoroughly accustomed to the brutality of clan warfare. Despite his skill and success in battle, he saw the incessant conflicts and political maneuvering as a betrayal of the Mogu's potential. Nevertheless, he remained stalwart as a vassal for his father. A close advisor eventually betrayed and murdered Lei Shen's father. Almost all of the fallen warlord's clansmen sought refuge in the ranks of the other clans, abandoning Li Shen. Only a few loyal armsmen refused to leave his side. Rather than seek retribution and perpetuate the violence, Lei Shen chose to go into exile. He wandered the land, meditating on what he saw as the failures of his kind. Soon, Lei Shen desired answers his intellect and reason could no longer provide. He set off in search of the Mogu's long-absent master, High Keeper Ra. In recent centuries, the High Keeper had become known as Ra Den, meaning Master Ra in the new Mogu tongue. Few of Lei Shen's kind even believed he still lived. Why would their ancient creator have allowed them to suffer from the curse of flesh? Lei Shen believed that Ra Den had a plan, a master purpose, and that the current trials of the Mogu were merely a test. Perhaps it was even the will of the Titans themselves. After all, Ra Den was their living instrument. After years of searching, Lei Shen located the entrance to the hidden vaults beneath the land north of the Vale, sacred chambers that the Mogu had all but forgotten due to their ceaseless warring. There he found the High Keeper, sitting quietly in the stillness beneath the earth. Ra Den showed no reaction to the young Mogu's intrusion. The High Keeper said nothing, even as Lei Shen began to ask him questions about the Mogu's true purpose. Days and weeks passed, and Lei Shen grew frustrated with his master's silence. Finally, the Mogu realized that Ra was not contemplating some subtle plan, was not engrossed in the work of the Titans. The High Keeper had simply given up. The suffering of the Mogu had been the result of an absent master and nothing more. Lei Shen unleashed his anger on Ra, accusing him of abandoning the Titans and their purpose. His harsh words roused the High Keeper from his stupor. Ra took Lei Shen to the nearby thundering mountains, where the unending storms roared and split the heavens. No Mogu had dared scale its slopes before, for the mountain was believed to be a forbidden place. Inside a massive, ornate vault, Ra Den summoned the lingering powers of Aman'Thul and showed Lei Shen the answers he wanted. The Titan and the Pantheon were dead, murdered by one of their own. Their final hope was the world of Azeroth itself, but it was already infested with creatures of the void. The High Keeper had assumed that this knowledge would shadow Lei Shen's soul as it had his own. Yet, the Mogu reacted in a way Ra Den never expected. Lei Shen decided that, if his master had no interest in continuing the Titan's purpose, he would do it himself. Without warning, he struck out and incapacitated Ra Den. Lei Shen then bound the mighty being in enchanted iron bands. He stole not only Ra Den's incredible power, but also the contained power of Aman'Thul. Might beyond understanding flooded through Lei Shen's soul. He imprisoned Ra Den within the thundering mountain, ignoring the High Keeper's rage and confusion at the betrayal. When Lei Shen descended the mountain and met with his remaining armsmen, they were in awe of him. Rumors of Lei Shen's newfound might spread among the Mogul clans. Some believed he had torn out the heart of the god and eaten it. A few claimed he had harnessed the ancient powers of the Vale itself. Still, others whispered that he was a Titan reborn. Yet, all of the stories had one fact in common. This Thunder King had demanded that all Mogu bow before him. He claimed the birthright of the Titans, and he would destroy all those who refused to yield to his will. Thereafter, Lei Shen set out to unify the Mogu and forge them a new destiny as the master of Azeroth and guardians of its world soul. The petty squabbling and warfare that had plagued their kind would no longer be tolerated. With lightning and thunder at his command, Lei Shen crushed all opposition. The fortunate ones were killed quickly. The unfortunate ones were kept in chains for centuries. Initially, most of the Mogu rallied to him out of fear, but his miracles soon inspired devotion. The Thunder King had mastered the enchanted tools of the Keepers. One of these was the engine of Nalak Shah, a powerful device that Lei Shen had discovered beneath the land north of the Vale. Using this extraordinary machine, the Mogu began shaping flesh and stone into new living creatures. They even found a way to reverse the curse of flesh among themselves. Under Lei Shen, a period of prosperity and brutality gripped the Vale for the Mogu. It was the beginning of a glorious new empire, yet, for the region's other races, it marked the start of an age of tyranny.